Hello, this is Fabian Bautista, as it says on the screen, and this is my 200 UX project. Most likely something you'd probably also be doing for GIMM 200. I know that says 250. I just realized like 5 minutes ago it says 250. I don't know why, but yeah. Anyways, the major project that is done in 250 is essentially designing or making a better UX product with some type of mobile application. I was with Doty. You might have a mod. I'm not I think they're kind of similar. I'm not entirely sure. But you essentially had the choice of either choosing to do a already existing app that you felt like didn't have as good of UX as you thought, because you do learn about some UX principles in this class, or you can choose to make your own app with like your own demographic and personas and all that, and design a UX experience around those demographics and personas, all that stuff. Oh yeah. Essentially, for our final project, we had to kind of like talk through our application, do maybe a little bit of a slideshow presentation about what we're doing. So this is just me going like, oh, hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. This is the game I'm choosing to redefine. And essentially just a mobile battle royale type thing. And you also do have to list out what exactly do you not like about the game in terms of like user experience. So according to this slide, I didn't really like how much it relied on microtransactions, which is a mobile game. So that's not really that surprising. It was very confusing to try to get to one place to another with a lot of information being thrown at you all at once. And some buttons and all that, I guess, didn't really make much sense. So with the UX projects, you're basically supposed to be identifying problems that you have with either an existing app, or this is only if you do an existing app. I can't remember too much, but I think if you did your own app, you had to first define what type of demographics or personas you would want your people of your application to be using. And then you would be essentially listing out what things do those types of people really look for. I think I get into this right here. Yeah, demographics and personas, which demographics are essentially like categories of like what types of people are going to be interacting with your product. Personas are just very specific examples or like archetypes of people you want. So I did have 3. They're not listed in here, or at least the text is. I do have like generic pictures. But the basic idea is that you're supposed to be identifying who exactly is going to be using your product or your app or game or whatever, and what exactly are they known for? What exactly do they kind of look for? So for me, with my Zooba game, the mobile game, I said the demographics are for a primarily younger audience, even though the game's suitable for all ages and backgrounds. So yeah, they're kind of interested in game mechanics, and I don't know what the simplicity versus complexity means. I assume that means that they prefer a more simple experience versus something more abstract. The preferred audience for this mobile game would want quicker games as opposed to something that's like 15 minutes all around. So I think right here is where I gave out like examples of what a persona could be. So I could be like, oh, it's just 2 friends that are bored on a day, and then they end up going to school and playing the game with their friends and having fun during lunch or something. I don't know. And then something like, oh, dad likes to play the game with his son and whatnot. So another thing that you do in 200 is essentially create surveys. And those surveys are a way for you to collect data about your demographics. So this is also something that you are going to be doing in another class. So you can consider it as kind of like good practice. There's 2 types of questions you're supposed to ask. One of them is scalar. I forgot what the other term is because this is like 2 years ago. But essentially, the other one is just like more open-ended questions. You know, how often can you play games with? Define fun and enjoyment in your own words. But the main idea with this data collection is supposed to be, you're supposed to be finding what exactly does your ideal demographic want to look for in games. Like right here, target demographic defined. Literally, what do they look for in specific games? So by asking this information, you're able to isolate keywords, key features, key terms that people look for in an application, and you're able to design your application to really emphasize those features. So yeah, more example. This is more scalar, I think. I don't know. Yeah. Uh yeah, this was just more so me just going through like how I did my research and all that. I split up my research. This isn't this imperative to your assignment. I'm just explaining the slides. Uh, I split up my research, my surveys into like different sections. So this one I think was like social aspects and community interaction, and this one was like actual in-game mechanics. This was like microtransactions and purchasing, and then this one was like competitiveness and generic game stuff. I don't know. That was just one way I approached getting this demographic data, was seeing like which categories that I just listed out are the most popular with people of my demographic. Yeah. So here is probably a better way to say it. I simplify the data to those categories. I define what my target demographic is, which I've already done. So you will probably have a different target demographic. I find the appropriate candidates, which is just another word for personas. I look over the scalar questions, which is just comparing what my target demographic, what I believe it is, what I believe the target demographic is for the app versus what is the general population. And again, find ways to emphasize those factors. And I don't know why I added this. It's just on here. Yeah, so this is just me going over data results. You will have to go over your results, I assume. And I made this very confusing thing. I don't know why. And yeah, afterwards, when you essentially have all your data, you're supposed to be taking your application, either like I said, you created it or something different. If you created it, you probably would have to list out like concept sketches. If it's something from another thing, you probably have to list inspirations, as I just did. And what you do with that, essentially, you list out your inspirations and then you show off your actual prototype. So essentially, you would create something in most likely Adobe XD, because you are required, at least for Doty, to have a Creative Cloud subscription. But as you see, there are other options. But you're essentially supposed to create a prototype, or at least some type of like imagining of what you think a better UX experience should be. So if you remember that old picture, how it looked like, this is how I instead chose to design the entire thing. So the idea of like, let's say, for instance, it felt like everything was kind of like in your face and you got overwhelmed with information. I chose to instead put a lot of the information off onto the sides. So essentially, you would you would have to like open up tabs or whatever to see your information like that. And then same thing with like character stuff. I didn't really change much with that. But yeah, the main part of this UX assignment is just for you to essentially show how did you choose to show the data that you collected onto your application. Remember, if you remember how much I said, how much on the slides, how much people dislike the transaction stuff. So if you go to the store, I designed it so there's only one special offer, because it is a game. It does have to get money. But essentially, immediately after, there's the more freemium stuff like coins and whatnot. Okay, yeah, and essentially, after you're done showing off your prototype, you're pretty much done. You don't need an end result type thing. This is just a conclusion slide, generic thing. But the main idea with this project is you're supposed to be able to identify essentially the process of creating a good UX experience for your apps or games or whatever. You're supposed to be able to learn how exactly are you going to define a target demographic or personas. How do you collect that data to see what people are looking for in a application with like the general population versus like the target demographic? How are you able to show specific factors or aspects that your target demographic or your whatever group wants to see in your application? So a lot of this is just UX prototyping and all that for 200 essentially.